John Locke exposed how women program men since birth, and you never noticed. The mind of man at birth is a blank slate, a tabula rasa, void of all characters without any ideas. These words from John Locke might seem innocent, academic, even. But beneath this seemingly harmless observation lies one of the most disturbing truths about male development that society has successfully hidden for centuries. What if everything you believe about yourself, your preferences, your ambitions, your very identity as a man, was actually programmed into you long before you could resist it? You've been told that men are naturally this way or that way. That your instincts and drives are hardwired, biological imperatives. Yet Locke exposed a far more unsettling reality, that your mind began as an empty vessel and someone else filled it. But who holds the pen that writes upon your blank slate? Who designed the man you've become? The disturbing truth is that from the moment of your birth, your development has been primarily orchestrated by women. Your mother, your female teachers, the women who dominated your early childhood education, they were the first programmers of your consciousness. This isn't conspiracy. It's the overlooked reality of how human development actually works. While fathers were historically absent, working outside the home, it was mothers who shaped the critical first years of your cognitive development. Locke's revolutionary insight wasn't just philosophical speculation, it was a warning that went unheeded. In his Some Thoughts Concerning Education, published in 1693, he detailed how the early education of children determines their future character. What he couldn't explicitly state, but what becomes evident upon deeper analysis, is the profound power imbalance this creates when one gender predominantly controls the developmental environment of the other. Consider how the education system itself has been feminized. In the United States, over 76% of all teachers from kindergarten through elementary school are women. These formative educational years, the very period when your identity and self-concept are being established, are overseen almost exclusively by female authority figures. Is it merely coincidence that boys are increasingly struggling in this environment, diagnosed with attention disorders at alarming rates, medicated into compliance? The modern man finds himself in an impossible position, judged by standards he had no hand in creating, measuring himself against ideals implanted in him before he could even speak. You strive to be good, but whose definition of goodness was programmed into you? You feel guilt and shame when failing to meet expectations, but who established those expectations in the first place? This isn't about assigning blame. Women aren't consciously conspiring against men's autonomy. Rather, this programming happens organically, invisibly, through the natural dynamics of early childhood development. The mother-son relationship becomes the template for all future relationships with women. Your need for female approval, your fear of female disapproval, these aren't random anxieties. They're the logical outcome of a developmental process where your first experiences of love, acceptance, and identity were mediated almost exclusively through female validation or its withdrawal. Locke's tabula rasa theory isn't just academic philosophy. It's the key to understanding why so many men today feel disconnected from their authentic selves, living lives designed to earn approval rather than express their true nature. The programming of the male mind begins with language itself. John Locke's revolutionary work in linguistics revealed how the words we learn shape the very thoughts we can think. But he could scarcely have imagined how this insight would become the foundation for the systematic modeling of male behavior through carefully constructed linguistic frameworks. Good boy. These two simple words, repeated countless times throughout childhood, establish the fundamental premise of male existence. Your value is conditional upon your behavior, meeting female approval. Unlike girls, who are more often praised for their inherent qualities, "You're so pretty, you're so sweet," boys learn early that they must perform correctly to receive love and validation. The male child quickly internalizes that his worth depends not on who he is but on what he does, specifically on how well he complies with expectations predominantly set by women. Think back to your earliest memories of school. When you were fidgety, physical, competitive, expressing natural male energy, how was this behavior framed? As problematic, as requiring correction. The boy who sits quietly, who follows instructions without questioning, who doesn't take up space, he receives approval. The message is clear. Natural male behavior is something to be overcome, not embraced. Locke understood that humans are fundamentally shaped by their associations, pain and pleasure, reward and punishment. What happens when the most important rewards in a young boy's life, attention, affection, approval, come primarily from women and are contingent upon suppressing his natural inclinations? You develop what psychologists now recognize as an externalized sense of self-worth. Your internal compass becomes calibrated not to your authentic desires, but to anticipated female responses to your behavior. This programming runs so deep that most men never recognize it operating within themselves. You believe you're making free choices, exercising independent judgment. But notice how often your decisions are unconsciously filtered through the question, how will women perceive this? This isn't natural, it's conditioned. When you buy certain clothes, pursue certain careers, adopt certain political positions, how much of this is authentic self-expression, and how much is the result of associative conditioning that rewards female-approved choices and punishes deviations? The true insidiousness of this programming lies in its invisibility. Unlike explicit indoctrination, which can be recognized and resisted, this conditioning occurs pre-verbally, pre-consciously. It becomes the operating system of your mind, running silently in the background, filtering your perceptions, guiding your behavior, all while creating the illusion of autonomy. Locke's insights on association and habit formation revealed how deeply humans can be influenced without their awareness. He wrote that, of all the men we meet with, 9 parts of 10 are what they are, good or evil, useful or not, by their education. But he could not openly acknowledge the gender dimension of this influence, how the predominance of female educators, caregivers, and early authority figures creates a specific form of programming uniquely experienced by males. The modern man exists in a perpetual double bind. The very traits that evolutionary psychology suggests were selected for in males over millions of years, aggression, competitiveness, risk-taking, stoicism, are precisely the traits most actively discouraged by female-dominated early education. You are biologically pulled in one direction, but socially programmed toward another, creating an internal conflict that manifests as the epidemic of male confusion, depression, and purposelessness we see today. John Locke's fundamental insight, that all knowledge comes to us through our senses, provides the key to understanding how male programming operates at the most intimate level. Nothing is in the intellect that was not first in the senses, he observed. But what happens when those sensory experiences are curated almost exclusively by women during your formative years? From birth, the male experience of the world is filtered through female interpretation. When you cried as an infant, it was overwhelmingly a woman who decided whether your distress warranted attention. When you explored your environment, it was primarily women who determined which behaviors were encouraged and which were curtailed. This sensory gatekeeping creates the foundation of male emotional development, not in abstract theory, but in the physical reality of how your nervous system was conditioned to respond. Consider how physical affection is distributed to male children versus female children. Research consistently shows that boys receive significantly less physical touch, less verbal affirmation, and less emotional mirroring than girls, all while being subjected to stricter behavioral controls. This sensory deprivation of nurturing touch combined with heightened negative feedback creates men who are simultaneously touch-starved and approval-seeking. Your craving for female validation isn't weakness. It's the predictable outcome of early sensory conditioning that linked rare moments of physical affection with meeting female expectations. Locke understood that humans are fundamentally pleasure-seeking and pain-avoiding creatures. What he couldn't explicitly articulate was how this principle becomes weaponized in male development. Women control access to the primary sources of pleasure and validation in a boy's life: approval, affection, attention. Simultaneously, they administer the primary sources of pain: disappointment, rejection, shame. This creates a powerful behavioral control system that operates beneath conscious awareness. The modern epidemic of nice guy syndrome, men who suppress all authentic desires and opinions in favor of what they think women want to hear, isn't random. It's the logical endpoint of sensory conditioning that rewarded compliance and punished self-assertion throughout development. These men aren't weak. They're responding rationally to the reward structure that shaped their nervous systems from infancy. Perhaps most disturbing is how this conditioning affects male sexuality itself. Your sexual desires and expressions were subjected to early female judgment long before you became sexually active. Which aspects of your emerging sexuality were met with disgust, which with encouragement? These reactions from mothers, teachers, and other female authority figures created the template for your adult sexuality, often leading to deep-seated shame and confusion that persist into adulthood. Locke's empiricism revealed that humans don't just passively receive sensory information, we actively construct meaning from it based on associations and patterns. For men, these patterns overwhelmingly revolve around female approval as the metric of success and acceptability. Your sense of accomplishment, your definition of strength, your understanding of your role in relationships, all have been calibrated to female standards through thousands of small sensory experiences distributed throughout your development. This isn't about blaming women. They too are operating within larger social systems, often unconsciously perpetuating patterns they themselves were conditioned into. But acknowledging this reality is essential for any man seeking authentic self-determination. Your senses have been calibrated to a particular frequency of female approval, and breaking free requires first recognizing how deeply this conditioning penetrates your perception of reality itself. John Locke provided not just the diagnosis of our condition but also the prescription for our liberation. If the mind begins as a blank slate that can be programmed by external influences, then it follows that this programming can be recognized, understood, and ultimately overwritten. The path forward isn't resentment toward women. It's the reclamation of your cognitive sovereignty through conscious awareness. The first step toward liberation is the most difficult, acknowledging the depth of your conditioning. Most men will resist this recognition fiercely. There's a profound narcissistic injury in admitting that your most deeply held values, your sense of purpose, even your sexual and romantic preferences have been largely programmed into you by external forces. But this recognition, painful as it is the essential foundation for authentic selfhood. Ask yourself, which of your beliefs about being a man come from genuine self-discovery, and which were implanted to ensure your compliance within a social system? Your aversion to certain behaviors labeled inappropriate for boys, your automatic deference to female emotional displays, your reluctance to fully occupy your physical and social space, are these authentic expressions of your nature or programmed responses designed to make you manageable? Locke emphasized that true freedom comes through understanding the influences that shape us. The only fence against the world is a thorough knowledge of it, he wrote. This knowledge must include recognizing how deeply female approval has been wired into your reward system. Notice how your mood, your sense of self-worth, even your basic sense of security still fluctuates based on female validation or its withdrawal. This awareness itself begins to loosen the grip of conditioning. The path forward requires developing what Locke would call an internal referent, a sense of value and purpose that exists independent of external validation, particularly female approval. This doesn't mean rejecting relationships with women or adopting a posture of hostility. Rather, it means engaging with women from a position of self-sovereign choice rather than conditioned compliance. Consider how transformative it would be to make decisions based solely on your authentic assessment of what brings you genuine fulfillment, not what you've been conditioned to believe will earn you approval. This might mean pursuing interests that women in your life find puzzling or even objectionable. It might mean expressing opinions that don't align with female-approved consensus. It might mean establishing boundaries that prioritize your well-being over others' expectations. The ultimate irony is that this reclamation of authentic masculinity actually creates the foundation for healthier relationships with women. When you engage from a place of genuine selfhood, rather than programmed compliance, you bring something real to the relationship, rather than a performance designed to elicit approval. Women respond to this authenticity, even when they consciously resist it, because it provides the security of clear boundaries and genuine presence. Locke's philosophy was revolutionary because it placed human development within human control. If we are shaped by sensory experience and association, rather than predetermined essence, then we can reshape ourselves through conscious intervention in these processes. The programmed man can become the self-authoring man through sustained awareness and deliberate recalibration of his value system. This is not a journey for the faint of heart. The pull of conditioned responses is powerful, and the social consequences of authentic self-expression can be significant. But consider the alternative: spending your one precious life performing a role written for you by others, never experiencing the profound satisfaction of authentic self-determination. The liberation of the male mind may be the most important philosophical project of our time, not in opposition to women, but in service of creating men capable of engaging with women as equals, rather than as approval-seeking dependents. This is the true meaning of Locke's legacy. Not just that we begin as blank slates, but that we possess at every moment the capacity to recognize our programming and write new instructions aligned with our authentic nature.